Keanu Reeves stood quietly in the back corner of the old Ma gym. His black hoodie pulled low over his eyes. The walls smelled like sweat and old leather. Echoes of fists hitting punching bags filled the space. It was late evening, and only a few fighters remained. They didn't notice him at first. They were too busy showing off, grunting with every punch, laughing at each other's sloppy kicks. Keanu wasn't here to be seen. He came because he missed something deep inside him. Something simple and real. No cameras, no lights, just pain and effort. He had heard about this gym from a stuntman friend who told him the fighters here were tough, raw, and honest. They didn't care about movies or Hollywood fame. They cared about who you really were when you stepped into the ring. Tonight, Keanu hoped he could train a little, maybe learn something new. He knew people thought he was just an actor who played tough guys, but real fighting was different. He respected that. He wanted to test himself, but respect is not something you get for free. Near the ring, a young fighter named Brody noticed him. Brody was big, broad shoulders, tattoos all over his arms. He was in his late 20s, hungry to prove himself. He squinted at the figure in the hoodie, then his eyes widened. "Hey man, is that, wait, are you Keanu Reeves?" Brody called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. A few other fighters turned. The coach, an old man named Frank, looked up from taping a student's hands. Keanu pulled his hood down, gave a small, humble smile. "Hey, yeah, I'm just here to train a bit, if that's cool." Brody laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Train here? You serious? This ain't no movie set, man. This is real fighting. You might break a nail." One of the other fighters, a skinny kid with cauliflower ears, chuckled nervously. Brody loved an audience. He stepped closer, towering over Keanu. "Listen, John Wick," Brody sneered, using the movie name like an insult. "You're just a movie star. You don't know what real pain feels like, real blood. You think you're tough, but you're just reading lines someone else wrote. We live this." Keanu didn't flinch. His eyes stayed soft, steady. "I know. I'm an actor," he said. "I respect what you guys do. That's why I'm here, to learn." Brody scoffed. "Learn from us? No, man, you don't get it. You can't just walk in here and pretend you belong. You want to learn? Get in the ring. Let's see what you got." A hush fell over the gym. Even old Frank paused, eyes sharp under his wrinkled brow. He'd seen many tough guys walk in, talk big, and crumble fast. But he also saw the calm in Keanu's eyes. It made him curious. Keanu nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, "but I don't want to hurt anyone." Brody burst out laughing. "Oh, you won't. Trust me, it's your pretty face that's gonna need fixing." They wrapped Keanu's hands with cheap tape. He slipped on a borrowed mouth guard. His hoodie dropped to the floor, showing a lean but solid frame. The fighters whispered to each other, amused. To them, he was just an actor playing dress-up in a dangerous place. The bell rang. Brody came out swinging. Heavy fists aimed straight at Keanu's head. The first punch grazed Keanu's jaw, and the room gasped. But something strange happened. Keanu didn't back away. His feet moved in tight circles, just like he learned from real stunt coordinators and fight masters over the years. He wasn't the fastest, but he was focused, calm. He ducked, blocked, and watched Brody's eyes for the next move. Brody landed a hard shot to Keanu's ribs. Pain bloomed, sharp and hot, but Keanu didn't fold. He breathed through it. He knew pain. He knew loss deeper than anyone here could guess. Suddenly, when Brody swung wide, Keanu stepped in and tapped his jaw with a quick, precise punch. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to knock him out. It was meant to say, "I see you. I respect you. But I'm not just a movie star." Brody snarled and came at him harder. The fight turned rough. Sweat dripped onto the mat. The other fighters pressed close, eyes wide. They saw it now, the quiet strength in the way Keanu moved, how he absorbed the blows, how he stayed humble but didn't quit. By the end of the second round, Brody was breathing heavy, shoulders sagging. Keanu stood in his corner, chest heaving, eyes locked on his opponent, but there was no hate in them, just respect. Old Frank leaned against the ropes, watching this strange man who didn't brag, didn't complain, just fought with heart. He saw the other fighters looking at each other, whispering. The room had shifted. The mocking laughter was gone. Now, there was something else in the air, a quiet respect growing, unexpected but real. When the final bell rang, Brody dropped his guard. Sweat poured down his face. He spit out his mouth guard and stared at Keanu. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Brody stepped forward and held out his glove. "You're tougher than you look, John Wick," he muttered. There was a small grin on his bruised lips. Keanu smiled back, breathless but steady. "Thanks, man. You're pretty good yourself." The other fighters nodded at him now. Some clapped him on the shoulder. They didn't care about Hollywood anymore. They saw the real man, standing in the ring, willing to bleed just like them. That night, as Keanu walked out of the gym, hoodie back on, his ribs aching, he felt lighter than he had in years. Outside, the streetlights flickered. He knew tomorrow would bring headlines, photos, more noise. But in this small gym, he had found a piece of himself again, not the actor, but the man who never stopped fighting, inside and out, and deep inside. He knew this was only the beginning. Keanu woke up the next morning with a dull ache running through his ribs and shoulders. Sunlight slipped through the curtains of his small hotel room. He stretched, winced at the pain, and then smiled to himself. It felt good, a reminder that he'd earned every bruise honestly. No stunt wires, no camera tricks, just fists, sweat, and truth. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dozens of messages blinked on the screen. Some were from his agent, some from friends who had seen clips from the gym already circulating online. Someone had filmed it. Of course they had. In this world, nothing stayed hidden for long. He didn't open the messages. Instead, he pulled on his hoodie and walked out to the street. He needed coffee, but more than that, he needed to think. As he walked, people recognized him. Some waved, some asked for selfies. He gave each person a warm smile. He was always grateful, even if the attention sometimes felt heavy. Today, though, the weight felt different, lighter. His mind kept replaying the look on Brody's face when they shook hands. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about the walls dropping for a moment. Two men seeing each other for who they really were. He reached a small diner a few blocks away. It was an old place, with chipped tables and the smell of fresh pancakes hanging in the air. Keanu liked spots like this, places where no one cared how much money you made or what movies you were in. He sat by the window, ordered black coffee and toast. As he sipped the bitter warmth, he overheard two men at the next table talking about the gym. "Did you see that clip? That movie star fighting Brody? I thought he'd get wrecked, but he held his own." The other man chuckled. "Yeah, he's got heart. You don't see that much." Keanu turned his gaze to the street outside. The city felt different today, bigger, yet smaller at the same time. He wondered if he'd really proven anything last night, or if he'd just gotten lucky. He pulled out his phone and finally read one message. It was from Frank, the old coach. It was short. "Come back tonight. Let's see if you're serious." Keanu smiled. The message felt like an invitation, but also a test. He knew he had to go back. That night, the gym looked the same. Gritty walls, sweat-soaked mats, the steady thud of gloves on heavy bags. But the energy was different when Keanu stepped through the door. Heads turned, but not with mockery this time. They nodded at him, like he belonged there now, at least a little. Frank waved him over. "You did good, kid," Frank said, though he was old enough to be Keanu's father. His eyes were sharp, but there was a spark of respect. "But one fight doesn't make you a fighter. You want to keep training?" Keanu nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I want to learn." Frank snorted. "Learning hurts. You ready for that?" "Yes," Keanu said again. Frank introduced him to Maya, a young Ma fighter in her early 30s. With a lean frame and quick feet, she was known for her lightning-fast strikes and the way she kept her emotions locked behind a calm mask. Maya crossed her arms, looking him up and down. "So you're the movie star," she said flatly. "I hope you're ready to get hit again." Keanu just smiled, unfazed. "I am. Teach me." Maya put him through drills that made his muscles scream. Footwork, grappling, shadowboxing until sweat ran down his back in rivers every time he stumbled. She corrected him. No cuddling, no special treatment. She barked orders, and he followed. The other fighters watched from the edges of the mat, some shaking their heads, others quietly impressed. They could see the truth now. He didn't come here for glory. He came to break himself down and build back up. After hours of training, they sat on the floor, gulping water. Maya finally spoke without the hard edge in her voice. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "You've got everything. Why come here and take hits for free?" Keanu wiped sweat from his forehead. "Because I don't want to forget what's real," he said softly. "Pain reminds me I'm alive. Fighting reminds me I'm still learning. I never want to stop learning." Maya stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "We'll see how much you really want this." As Keanu walked out of the gym that night, bruises blossoming across his arms, he felt something inside him shifting. He was no longer just an actor pretending to fight. He was stepping into a world where respect was earned punch by punch, drop of sweat by drop of sweat. The world outside stayed noisy, headlines, fans, and flashing cameras waiting for him to slip up or say something clever. But inside that old gym, none of that mattered. It was just him, the mat, the bag, the next blow to dodge, and deep down, he knew he was ready to take every hit that came his way. Because this fight wasn't just about fists, it was about proving, most of all to himself, that he still had more to give. Keanu's body woke him up before the alarm did. Pain pulsed through his ribs. His legs felt like dead weight, and his knuckles were swollen from hours of hitting the heavy bag. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the city outside. It would have been easy to stay there, to rest, to tell himself that he'd done enough already, that he didn't need to go back to that grimy gym where every punch hurt worse than the last. But a small voice inside pushed him to get up. It said, "You promised." He moved slow, careful with every step. He made himself a plain breakfast, eggs and toast, black coffee strong enough to wake up his bones. Then he pulled on his hoodie again, the same one he wore that first night. The cloth was stained now, smelling faintly of sweat and old tape, but he liked it that way. It reminded him of who he was when no one was watching. At the gym, Frank was waiting, arms crossed, a faint grin under his gray stubble. The place felt busier than before. More fighters had come to see if the story was real, if the movie star was really coming back. For more punishment. Maya was there too, wrapping her hands tight. Her eyes locked on Keanu as he walked in. She didn't smile, but she nodded once, a silent sign that he'd earned a sliver of her respect. "You're late," she said, "to minutes." He said, looking at the clock on the wall, "Late is late. Drop your bag, warm up, you're sparring today." Keanu's heart thudded in his chest. Sparring. Last time it was Brody, and he barely held his own. Now he'd be put in with someone trained to move fast, hit harder, and push him past his breaking point. Maya paired him with Luis, a light heavyweight with a quiet laugh and hands like bricks. Luis had been fighting since he was a teenager, and he didn't care that the man in front of him was a star. In the ring, everyone was equal. The first few rounds were rough. Keanu tried to remember his footwork, but Luis's hooks slipped past his guard, landing heavy on his arms, shoulders, and once, square in his side where the bruise from Brody still lingered. The pain made him gasp. Frank shouted from the corner, "Breathe, move your feet, don't stand there like a statue." Keanu forced himself to push through the pain. He circled, ducked under Luis's jab, and landed a clean punch to the ribs. Luis grinned through his mouth guard. "Nice shot, Hollywood," he said. Again, Keanu felt something ignite inside him, not anger, but something deeper. A memory flashed behind his eyes of nights spent alone after his sister's funeral. The emptiness in his chest, the feeling that he was just drifting. This pain, this fight, pulled him back to earth. He blocked a hook, slipped to the side, and tapped Luis on the chin. Not hard, but clean. The fighters watching outside the ropes murmured. They didn't expect that. They expected him to fold. After 4 rounds, they called it. Luis clapped him on the shoulder. "You're tougher than you look," he said, breathless, but smiling. Keanu leaned against the ropes, sweat dripping from his hair, vision blurry with exhaustion. But he was smiling too, Every part of him hurt, but inside, he felt more alive than he had in years. Maya tossed him a towel. "Not bad for a movie star," she said. "You keep showing up like this. They'll forget you ever made movies." Keanu laughed, a sound that came from deep in his chest. "I don't want them to forget," he said softly. "I just want them to see the real me." That night, Frank pulled him aside as he was packing up. The old man's voice was gruff, but kind. "You got something, kid," Frank said. "It ain't your punches, not yet. Anyway, it's your heart. Most people come in here looking for glory. You come in looking for truth. Keep that, and you'll be all right." Keanu nodded, the words sinking into him like a warm blanket. But just as he was about to leave, a voice echoed from the other side of the gym. "Hey, Reeves." He turned. Brody stood there, bruises still faint on his jaw, but his eyes were sharp and almost playful now. "You up for round 2 tomorrow? No cameras, no crowd. Just you and me. Let's see if that respect goes both ways." Keanu paused. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth it ever was. He stepped closer, looked Brody in the eyes, and nodded. "I'll be here." The fighters around them exchanged glances. Some smirked, some looked worried, but they all felt it. Something was changing here. As Keanu walked out into the night air, the street lights flickering above him, he felt the ache in his muscles, the sting in his ribs, and the warmth in his heart. He had walked into this world as a movie star. Now he was something more. And tomorrow, he knew, the fight would really begin. Keanu lay awake long after the streetlights outside his window had gone dim. The city hummed quietly, a soft whisper under the dark sky. His body was sore from the inside out, every bruise a reminder of what he'd chosen. He traced the line of purple on his ribs with gentle fingers and thought about Brody's challenge. Round 2. No crowd, no clips for the internet, just fists and truth. He felt a twinge of fear deep in his chest, not fear of pain. He was used to pain. It was the fear of losing the respect he'd fought so hard to earn. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, remembering Frank's words. "It's your heart, not your punches." By morning, the fear had settled into a steady calm. He packed his bag like a ritual. Tape, gloves, a clean shirt. He slipped on his battered hoodie, the one soaked with days of sweat and effort. It smelled like hard work. It smelled like honesty. The gym was nearly empty when he arrived. Only Frank was there, leaning against the cage, arms folded across his chest. He didn't say anything, just gave a nod toward the ring. Brody was already inside, stretching his arms, bouncing lightly on his toes. The tension in the air felt heavy, like the pause before thunder. Keanu climbed in, feet brushing the scuffed mat. They didn't bother with small talk. They both knew why they were here. Frank rang the bell with a sharp clang. The first round was cautious. Brody moved with a patience Keanu hadn't seen before. No mocking laughter this time, just the laser focus of a fighter who wanted to see what was real. They circled each other, breathing steady, feet light. Brody threw a jab. Keanu blocked, feeling the punch vibrate through his arms. They traded hits, some sharp, some soft, testing, learning. Keanu's breath came in measured pulls. His ribs screamed with every twist, but he stayed on his feet. The second round was harder. Brody found a rhythm, landing body shots that made Keanu's vision blur. Sweat dripped from his chin onto the mat. He stumbled once, glove brushing the canvas, but he pulled himself up before Frank could count. Brody's eyes flickered with something like respect, but he didn't ease up. He slammed a hook into Keanu's side, driving the air from his lungs. Keanu dropped to one knee, gasping. The gym was silent except for the echo of their breathing. Frank stepped closer to the ropes. "Call it, Keanu. No shame in it." Keanu's mind raced. He felt the weight of all the moments that had led him here. The late nights on empty movie sets, the lonely hotel rooms, the laughter he gave the world while carrying his own silent grief. He thought about every person who ever said he was just a face on a screen. He pushed himself up, gloves pressing into the mat. His legs wobbled, but he locked his eyes on Brody. Again, he whispered. Brody shook his head in disbelief. "You're stubborn, John Wick." Keanu just smiled, his lips split and bleeding. "Only way I know how to be." The last round was a storm. Brody came at him with everything. A mix of frustration and something close to brotherhood. Each punch landed like thunder, but Keanu gave back what he could. He slipped a hook, caught Brody on the jaw. Brody grunted, eyes wide with surprise. They clashed like that until the final bell rang. Both men standing, gasping, sweat dripping onto the canvas like rain. Brody pulled out his mouth guard, spit into the corner, and held out his glove. Keanu touched it, their fists pressing together, heavy and raw. "You proved me wrong," Brody said, his voice low but steady. "You're not just a movie star. You're a fighter. Maybe one of us." Keanu felt something warm spread through his chest, a relief deeper than any spotlight could ever give him. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." Frank leaned on the ropes, shaking his head, a rare grin breaking his stern face. "Damn fools, both of you," he said. "That's the best fight this place has seen in years." Maya appeared at the edge of the ring, arms crossed, her face unreadable as always. But when their eyes met, she gave him a tiny nod, approval hard-earned and honest. That night, they all sat on the old benches outside the gym. Keanu, Brody, Maya, Frank. They passed around water bottles and bags of ice, talking about fights, mistakes, life outside these walls. For the first time, Keanu didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like part of something real. As the moon rose above the city skyline, he thought about what lay ahead, more training, more bruises, more nights like this. But he wasn't afraid. He welcomed it. Because here, with these people who called him out, knocked him down, and lifted him up again, he wasn't just Keanu Reeves the movie star. He was Keanu Reeves the fighter. And in this ring, in this simple place where the only thing that mattered was how much heart you carried inside you, he knew he had finally found something true. Keanu's body was bruised, but his spirit felt like it was burning with a new fire. Days turned into weeks, and every morning he woke up sore but hungry to step back into that old gym. The moment he pushed open the creaking door, the smell of sweat and old leather wrapped around him like a promise. Here, nothing was fake. Frank started pushing him harder. The bag work was longer. The drills with Maya were faster, more complex. Some days she knocked him down so many times that he would lie on the mat, staring up at the cracked ceiling, feeling the ache in his bones, but hearing her voice cut through it all. "Get up," again, and every time he did. The fighters in the gym began to treat him differently. At first, they watched him like a stray dog that might not stick around. Now they nodded at him, asked him to hold pads, gave him tips on his stance. Brody, who once mocked him, now sparred with him like a brother. Sometimes they laughed between rounds, bruised and breathless, wiping blood from split lips. One night, after everyone else had gone home, Keanu sat on the mat with Maya. She wrapped a fresh bandage round his wrist, her fingers quick and practiced. The hum of the city outside drifted through the half-open windows. "Why do you really do it?" she asked suddenly, her voice softer than usual. "Is it just the pain, or is there something more?" Keanu stared at his hands, the veins raised under bruised skin. He thought about how long he'd carried his quiet grief, how he'd hidden it behind polite smiles and movie lines. He looked at Maya, her eyes, sharp yet kind. "When I was young," he began slowly, "I watched my best friend die. Later, my daughter. Then my sister. People I loved just gone. I had all these stories inside me, all these parts to play. But nothing felt real. Nothing hurt like losing them." Maya sat still, listening, her hands resting in her lap. "This place, this pain," he said, tapping his chest. "It makes me feel like I'm here, really here. Every bruise, every punch, it's honest. It reminds me that life can't be controlled, can't be rewritten. You stand up or you stay down. No retakes." Maya didn't speak for a moment. Then she reached out and touched his bandaged wrist. "You know," she said, "most people come here trying to run away from pain. You run straight into it." Keanu gave a tired smile. "Maybe that's the only way I know how to live." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "Tomorrow, Frank wants you in the cage. Real match. Just local, but real. You sure you're ready?" He felt a tremor in his chest, fear mixed with excitement. A real fight meant no soft hits, no pulling punches. It meant putting every hour of training, every drop of sweat, every lesson into that one moment. "I'm ready," he said quietly. "Win or lose, I want to know how deep this goes." The next night, the gym was packed. Word had spread that Keanu Reeves, the movie star who got punched in movies, was about to take real punches in a real cage. Some came to see him fail. Some came hoping he'd surprise them. As he wrapped his hands in the locker room, Frank sat beside him, eyes steady. "You nervous?" Frank asked, terrified. Keanu said honestly. Frank barked out a laugh. "Good. It means you care." Maya slipped in, holding his mouth guard. She pressed it into his palm. "Remember, protect yourself. Don't try to be the hero. Just fight smart. Fight with your heart, but don't let it get you killed." Keanu slipped the guard in, pulled on his gloves, and stepped out into the noise. The cage lights were harsh, the mat a dull gray. Across from him stood his opponent, a young man named Ray, quick, lean, all fire and speed. Ray bounced on his toes, eyes locked on Keanu with a hungry grin. The bell rang. The first round was chaos. Ray came at him like a storm, jabs snapping, kicks thudding against Keanu's legs. He stumbled back, feeling the metal fence of the cage against his spine. He focused on his breathing, the sounds of Frank shouting from the corner. He blocked one punch, ducked under another, countered with a hook that glanced off Ray's shoulder. Pain lit up his ribs again. He tasted blood in his mouth. In the second round, he found a rhythm, small steps, tight guard, slipping under punches like Maya drilled into him. He landed a clean body shot, felt Ray grunt in surprise. The crowd gasped, some cheering, some jeering. The third round was the hardest. His vision blurred at the edges, each breath ragged. But inside that haze, he felt alive, more alive than he ever had on a movie set. More alive than the crowds could ever make him feel. As the final seconds ticked down, Ray swung wide. Keanu saw it coming, stepped in, and drove his fist into Ray's midsection. The young fighter staggered, arms dropping for a split second. Enough for Keanu to slip in a quick jab that snapped Ray's head back. The bell rang. It was over. Both men stood, chest to chest, gasping for air. Eyes locked in that quiet place only fighters know. The ref raised Keanu's hand. He had done it. By points, by grit, by heart. The gym roared. Frank's voice cut through the noise, half laughing, half scolding. Maya leaned on the cage, arms folded, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Brody was shouting from the sidelines, pounding the fence like a proud brother. Keanu looked up at the bright lights, sweat dripping into his eyes, and felt something inside him settle. Not pride, not exactly. More like peace. He hadn't come here to win a belt or a trophy. He'd come here to remember he was alive. As he stepped out of the cage, bruised and battered, the roar of the gym faded into something quieter. A truth that would carry him through whatever waited outside these walls. He wasn't just a movie star anymore. He was a fighter, a learner, a man who still believed in getting back up, no matter how many times he was knocked down. The next morning, Keanu woke up before dawn, the city still wrapped in darkness. His body felt like a battlefield, ribs aching, knuckles raw, bruises blooming like purple flowers under his skin. But when he sat up, he felt no regret, only gratitude. He made himself tea instead of coffee this time, letting the steam warm his face. He watched the sky turn from black to gray, a slow promise of another day. He knew people would talk about the fight. The clips were probably everywhere by now. Headlines about the movie star who stepped into a real cage and didn't back down. He didn't care about the noise anymore, not like he used to. Later that afternoon, he walked back to the gym. He could have taken a car, but he liked feeling the street under his feet, the way the city's sounds mixed with his heartbeat. He wore the same old hoodie, his lucky one. He felt the eyes on him as he passed. Some people whispered, some pointed, but it didn't bother him. They could keep their stories. He knew his truth. Inside the gym, the fighters were already there. Brody taping his wrists, Maya shadowboxing in the corner, Frank arguing with a new kid about proper footwork. It smelled like sweat and effort and stubborn hope, like always, when Keanu walked in. They all paused. They didn't clap or cheer. They just nodded. A silent greeting that meant more than any headline ever could. Brody smirked, a bruise still fresh under his eye. Look who decided to show up. You here to retire now that you're the champ? Keanu laughed, shaking his head. Just here to work. Maya stepped closer, arms crossed. Good. Because Frank's got a surprise for you. She turned, nodding. Toward the back room. Keanu raised an eyebrow, wiping sweat from his forehead as he followed. In the back room, Frank stood next to a heavy bag, but it wasn't just any bag. This one was brand new, the leather still smooth, the seams tight. Above it, hanging from the chain, was a small plaque. Keanu leaned closer to read it. For the fighter who never stopped learning. His throat tightened. He looked at Frank, who pretended to fuss with the chain. Figured you could use a place that's always yours. Frank grumbled, that way, no matter where you go, you got a piece of this place. A reminder. Keanu ran a hand over the leather, feeling the weight of it. He thought about every punch he'd thrown here, every bruise that taught him something, every moment when he almost gave up but didn't. Thank you, he said softly. His voice cracked, but he didn't care. Frank gave him a rare, crooked grin. Don't thank me yet. You've still got rounds to run. They stepped back out onto the mat. Maya was already waiting, gloves up, eyes sharp but warm now, a hint of pride shining through. Brody leaned against the ropes, shouting his usual nonsense about Hollywood getting his pretty face smashed again. Keanu tied his gloves tight. His body protested, but his heart felt light. He looked around at these people, misfits, fighters, dreamers, and realized they had become more than sparring partners. They were his teachers, his challengers, his family in a way he hadn't felt in years. As he squared up with Maya, he caught her eyes, dark and steady. She gave him a quick nod, then moved in with a fast jab. He blocked it, slipped left, felt his ribs complain, but ignored the pain. He was learning, always learning. The gym echoed with the sound of gloves hitting pads, the low growl of the old clock on the wall, the laughter and shouts that came between rounds. Outside, the city roared on, hungry for its next story. But in here, nothing else mattered. With every punch, every breath, every drop of sweat, Keanu proved it to himself again and again. He was more than what people said he was, more than just a movie star. He was a man who refused to stay down. When the round ended, he dropped his gloves, breathless but smiling, sweat dripping into his eyes. He looked at Frank, Maya, Brody, at everyone who believed he didn't belong here once, and felt only one thing: gratitude. Because in this ring, in this old, worn gym, he'd found what he was searching for all along. Not fame, not applause, but truth. And that truth would never leave him, no matter how bright the lights outside got, no matter how loud the world became. Inside him, there would always be that quiet voice, steady and sure, saying, "Get up, again, always again."